that has no name, which makes it unique. Today we are again with my good friend Nick at Looking for Strange, previewing the Green Bay Packers Seattle Seahawks game. Nick, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. I'm a little disappointed right now because, well, I guess I'm not disappointed, but people are going to be disappointed by my prediction later. So,
Yeah.
I mean, people in Packerland, that is.
I'm already disappointed in you.
Sound like my parents.
All right, so I'll start with the injury report for the game. For Green Bay, Aaron Rodgers was a limited participant with a calf injury, same as last week, killed to a little bit of practice. Down with
Yo,
my good
yep.
friend at Looking for Strange. Hold on, we got issues again. What is?
Just restart.
Yeah.
All
Hold on.
right, good.
All right, so here we go. Yeah. All right, so we'll continue. Anyway, so Aaron Rodgers had the calf injury, limited like last week, limited participant. For him, he will play this week. Josh Sitton has a toe injury all year, limited participant. He will play. And Josh Boyd has an ankle injury, limited participant. He should play. For Seattle, offense tackle Justin Britt has a knee injury. Did not practice on Wednesday, but he should play. Defensive tackle Tony McDaniels has a shoulder injury. Did not participate in practice. Expect to play. And cornerback Byron Maxwell, who last week had shortness of breath and was pulled from the game, practice and will play this week. All right, so we are going to start immediately with some keys to the game. Nick, what are some keys to the game for Green Bay?
I think I'd start by saying, in a sense, like that Lacey needs to really continue to from where he's gone the last couple, or I guess 10 weeks is over 100 yards now, I guess, in total offense.
Yeah.
It's going to be really imperative for them to get him the ball because you don't know where Aaron Rodgers is right now in terms of his calf. So I think that's first and foremost on offense. That's going to be really important to establish a run and really get going with that. Um, I think at this point, um, this game is going to be completely different than week one. We've been talking about this for a while now, but um, especially with the old line playing better with Balaga at right tackle and not having a turnstile and Sherrod over at right tackle in that game, which was really tough to watch. But at this point, the first and foremost, I think the most important thing is getting Eddie Lacy in the ball and not being afraid to run on what is a very tough run defense.
Yeah. And you
Also,
mentioned, oh, go
oh,
ahead.
sorry. Go ahead.
You mentioned the offensive line. I mean, we're talking about week one, which people love to bring up the blowout game. Corey Linsley, that was his first ever start, and in Seattle, it's a tough place to play. And you look at where he is now, he's one of the better young offensive linemen in the league, finishes one of the top 10 centered by Pro Football Focus. Brian Bulaga has been a very good right tackle this year. So going from Sherrod to Bulaga will be a huge, magnificent upgrade.
Agreed. And I still think going back to week one in that game, when you look at the way the Packers attacked them on offense, I don't think they didn't throw at Richard Sherman once all game.
No.
So, I mean, at that point, I mean, I get that he's probably one of the two or three best corners in the league and is the definition of a shutdown corner. But at the same time, I don't think you can be afraid of him necessarily. Because if you're going to give up that third of the field, you know, I mean, it's essentially at that point it's a sprint rollout to whatever side you're starting, or to the opposite side, and then, I mean, it just simply allows Seattle to roll coverage to help over, to whoever is starting on the second corner. I'm not sure who that is this week if Maxwell's out, but I mean, at that point, you're giving up that third of the field, and I mean, from week one, I mean, you can go back and look at that and say that's just not going to work.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, and again, I think I don't necessarily want to see Jordy out there because that's the type of receiver that Sherman usually shuts down. He's not a quick guy. Um, I've been kind of chatting with some people, and it's basically I think the best case scenario for the Packers is to get Cobb singled out on Sherman as much as possible. Cobb has the short area quickness, and I mean he's a smaller guy, which going back to guys like T.Y. Hilton or those smaller, quicker type guys who will give Richard Sherman trouble because I mean he's a bigger corner and struggles. I mean struggles in a sense that that's not just his area of expertise.
And Byron Maxwell will likely start, but even then, so you had Earl Thomas on the other side of the field on Maxwell's side. So you're throwing to a field where Earl Thomas is, you're ignoring a third of the field, and just that game plan by Green Bay. I mean, it almost took away half the field, which was embarrassing.
Yeah, I mean, you have arguably the best player in the league. I mean, it's either him or J.J. Watt at this point in Aaron Rodgers, and you're going to tell the guy to simply just stay away from that side of the field. I mean, I don't think you can be afraid to do so. Now, saying that same time, though, you don't know who Aaron Rodgers is going to be this week. I don't know, like in the second half of last week's game, he looked a lot better than he did in the first half. I don't know if it's because his calf kind of loosened up a bit, or if he just gained more confidence in it. But if it's going to be Aaron Rodgers of the first half last week, I can see why they might stick to a similar situation or game plan that they did in Week 1 against Seattle.
Yeah, and looking back at that game against Seattle, I mean, one of the big things that you saw was there were plenty of occasions where Rodgers would roll out of the pocket. That's obviously not something he'll be able to do. Though I do think last week that we saw in the second half versus Dallas, I mean, I think a big part of that was he was loaded up on painkillers. I mean, that probably made some of the pain go away and made things easier for him. He probably did have more confidence in it. So I think we'll hopefully see some of that again. But, I mean, even if he's not able to move as well out of the pocket, the offensive line being significantly better from where it was in Week 1 should help counteract that.
Right, and going to like the defensive side of the ball for the Packers, in Week 1, Percy Harvin tore apart the Packers, and now you can look at that again and say now Percy Harvin obviously hasn't been a member of the Seahawks for a while, so I mean they used a lot of jet sweeps and that type of thing and got him the ball and at or near the line of scrimmage a lot to use his quickness, and that's going to be huge for the Packers not having, or the Seahawks not having Harvin now. So I mean, the rest of the receivers for the Seahawks don't necessarily scare me. I mean, Baldwin's decent, but I mean, he's certainly not a number one in the league. They lost Paul Richardson last week, who had been coming on a little bit, and he seemed to be, I mean, he can fly, but the rest of the receivers that Seattle has, I mean, guys like Ricardo Lockett, Curse, and stuff like that, none of those guys are really, anything special. They're not anything more than like number 3s or number 4s in the league. So beyond that, like none of those guys really scare me. So it's going to be imperative to keep Russell Wilson in the pocket in that sense and not over pursue, which to me is a bit concerning, especially with. I mean, Clay Matthews has been in the middle for a while now, but that's something he still struggles with, is over-pursuing.
Yeah, and that's one thing that we saw Seattle attack a lot in Week 1, which Green Bay should be better at now, is Green Bay was over-aggressive. I mean, you saw, I believe it was Seattle's first touchdown in the game. It was a fake to Lynch. Sam Shields bit, oh, goodness, he bit on that. Went pretty much into the backfield and left his wide receiver wide open. Clinton Dix missed the tackle. It was an easy touchdown. And also you mentioned the sweeps by Percy Harvin moving him around. Julius Peppers was all on biting onto everything on that, and Seattle attacked him there. So hopefully without Percy Harvin and with more patience, Green Bay can show some improvement there.
Right. And it's going to be one of those things now is like you go back to the playoffs the last few years of the Packers trying to stop Colin Kaepernick on that read option or any type of play action or something like that, and they haven't been able to do it. So I'm not sure, if what Dom Capers is going to be doing to necessarily counteract that, or if the Packers are going to over pursue and you're going to see Russell Wilson running all over the field. I mean, it's not his first instinct, but it's not. He certainly has the ability to do so. And I mean, I guess even at this point, we still haven't gotten to the fact that Marshawn Lynch right now is arguably one of the 2 or 3 best running backs in the NFL.
Yeah.
So, and Seattle just gotten back, their center, Max Unger, who's one of the better ones in the league. Um, it's going to be interesting to see what the Packers decide to do. Do they stick an extra guy in the box to stop Lynch, and then kind of risk it to whether a play action pass or two that can get one of those Seattle receivers behind the Packers defense, or even if we've gotten to the Packers at times struggling with over pursuit, if you commit that extra guy and that guy over or to Marshawn Lynch and that guy over pursues again, that again becomes your problem with Russell Wilson, scrambling around getting 25, 30 yards at a pop.
And you mentioned Lynch, and I think one of the big things for Green Bay, I mean, obviously, Jermaine Kearse, Seattle has Jermaine Kearse and Doug Baldwin. I think that's a situation where you can put Sam and Tremont in one-on-one coverage and let them battle it out. I think that they could win those most of the time. So that leaves attacking Marshawn Lynch. And an area where Green Bay struggled all season is wrapping up with angles, and against Marshawn Lynch, that's not a good combination.
Yeah, and a lot of people have been talking about, haha, that was his first game in the NFL and whatnot. But that's still one of his biggest concern about haha right now is he's still not a very good tackler. Um, and I think that's going to be one of the keys to the game is if he's going to miss one or two of those open field tackles on a Marshawn Lynch or someone to that extent, that's going to be, going from a 5-yard gain to a 25 to 35-yard gain and even maybe a score. So, I mean, in a sense, I mean, he's a better player than he was to start the year off, but he's still the area that he struggles with, in tackling is a major concern.
Yeah, as you mentioned, that's been an ongoing issue. And we even saw that last week with he just took some bad reads into Marco Murray. Marco Murray slipped past him. So it's not just a 1 week thing.
Right. I mean, people want to talk about him and his proven and everything, but he was really bad last week. I mean, particularly in tackling. And as much as I love DeMarco Murray, he's a good player. I still think Marshawn Lynch is a better back. And like I said, if he's going to have a bad game in the secondary and he can't tackle, that's going to be you might as well hand Seattle the win to start with.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, at this point, like, it's going to come down to some of the younger guys in the secondary, particularly. Haha, if he can play his best game, and I mean, he certainly has the ability to do so. I mean, he was a first-round pick for a reason. But if he could play his best game and for whatever reason, start tackling well, that's going to do a ton to help the Packers out, especially, with being able, if he can, wrap up on Marshawn, it allows for one more guy to, focus more on any type of read option or play action that Russell Wilson might, be doing.
And I think another thing, obviously, how the secondary plays and tackles will be key. We also need to see Clay Matthews and Julius Peppers together have great games.
Yeah. Peppers was fantastic last week. He basically made the play of the game with that strip of DeMarco Murray. And it's going to be interesting. Is like, we keep going back to over pursuit and things like that. But being able to, you don't want the rushers getting too far upfield on Russell Wilson because, again, that's going to allow him to scramble out or get up in the pocket or even scramble outside of it and give him lanes to run for, 20, 30 yards at a time. And that's certainly something that makes me nervous, and I hope that Don Capers really focuses on this week. Making sure that, taking good angles and keeping in your rush lanes especially.
Yeah. When you mentioned over pursuing, I mean, last week, Clay Matthews, I mean, that was one of the worst games I've seen him have in a while. He was, I mean, just getting pushed to the ground by Tyrone Smith. He missed a bad tackle on DeMarco Murray in the backfield. So he's going to need to cool it down with over pursuing and try and just have some patience and just tackle Lynch.
Yeah. And that's one of the keys that think it might hurt them in the end, but it's going to be important because he's always one of those guys that lets his emotions get the best of him. And but if he were to make a play or two early, that's going to help calm him down in the game, and really set himself, get his feet wet, set himself up for success in the rest of the game.
Yeah. And back to Green Bay offense versus Seattle defense. I think first of all, big key for Green Bay because watching Seattle, they lost Brandon Mebane earlier in the year, so I mean, with Kevin Williams inside, they're not as strong as they used to be. So I think that's an area where Green Bay will have to pound the football and just go right at Seattle, and hopefully that'll wear them down a little bit, have some success. But for Seattle stopping Green Bay, I mean, I respect their defense a lot. I think it's a lot of their secondary and linebackers, but I don't think their front four will have a lot of success versus Packers' offensive line getting after Rodgers. So I think they will have to send some pressure.
Right, and years past it was their D line, and they had so much depth there. But I mean, you can't really pay all those guys, and guys like Cliff Averill leaving, and now Mebane getting hurt, stuff like that. I mean, they still have some good players over there, particularly like a guy like Michael Bennett. But at the same time, if Lacey can have success on the ball, getting him the ball 18, 20, 25 times, and he can run for even 80, 90 yards in the game, that's going to take some of those players off the field on pass rushing situations. I mean, because a guy, if Kevin Williams is an older guy, he's heavier, and whatnot, he's not going to be able to play that many snaps. So that's going to really test their depth, and particularly on passing downs if they have success early, getting ahead of the sticks, keeping, getting Lacey a carry here and there. And I mean, he doesn't even have to have great success, running for 6-7 yards a pop. Even if he just gets you 3 yards, that's going to keep you in the third and short, and that's going to be really important.
Yeah, I mean, for projecting Lacey, I have him around. I think he needs to get the ball at least 25 carries, and if he can get me 90 yards with that, and just get 4 yards and move the chains a little bit, I'm perfectly happy with that.
Yeah, and that's going to be something that's going to be important, is being able to continue to feed him the ball and not getting too cute with the offense. I mean, like you kind of alluded to earlier, Sherman's one of the 2 or 3 best corners in the league. Earl Thomas is the best free safety. Can't think who's this strong safety. Cam Chancellor's probably the best strong safety in the league. I mean, that secondary is completely loaded. So I mean, as much as Aaron Rodgers is probably the best quarterback and best player in the NFL, him with that injury, it's going to be important to not get too cute and throw the ball too many times. And that makes me nervous in the sense that if they don't have success early running the ball, they've shown earlier in the year and throughout the year that they can get away from it.
Yeah, and you just mentioned, I mean, that's really been Mike McCarthy's Achilles heel. I mean, it's like a ship that just has a little bit of water in it. He abandons it quickly.
Yep.
And he'll let Rodgers throw it 30, 35 times, and you can't do that, especially with his calf injury and when he's I mean, I love Rodgers, but he's pretty much a sitting duck in the pocket right now. So you cannot let Rodgers throw it 30 times on Sunday.
Yeah. And again, it's going to be one of those things if the Packers can get ahead early, that's going to be one of those things I mean, as cliche as that is, you get ahead early, you take Marshawn Lynch out of the game, potentially, obviously, and then it allows you to hand the ball off to Lacey more often and limit the hits that Rodgers might have to take, or even the attempts that you're going to have to throw at that secondary, which is the best in the league. It's going to be interesting in a sense that let's just say Seattle gets out 10-0 early, something to that. Like you said, McCarthy, there's a good chance that he just abandons the run game altogether.
I think one thing we need to see, and I think we saw Green Bay have some success with this, is using the pistol formation. They had 2 backs in the backfield and letting Lacey get that momentum when he gets the ball to move ahead, and John Kuhn in front, lead blocking in front of him. That's a big thing for Lacey finding success.
Yeah, it's funny when you watch him in the shotgun or running out of the shotgun. So at times he can get kind of he stops going north and south and gets too patient almost. But even last week they showed him in the pistol. Once he gets that first step or two, getting north and south, that seems to be where he has his most success.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk about some X factors for each team. Who are some of your X factors for the Packers?
Um, First and foremost, probably Clay Math. I mean, it's. Well, actually, I'll say it this way: like, haha, Clinton Dix. He might be the most important player on defense this week. As much as he's not our best player on defense, but he needs to have a good game, especially tackling, for the Packers to have a chance to win. We've kind of harped on this a lot, but even in that sense, it's going to be if he doesn't really tackle well, that it's going to force the Packers to have to commit an extra guy to that run game, and that's where Russell Wilson's going to hurt you. Because as much as people, I'm a firm believer that Russell Wilson's one of the 5 best quarterbacks in the league, and not only because he can hurt you with his legs, but he's a very accurate passer. Even even though, I mean, his weapons aren't much around him, like I kind of alluded to earlier, like Doug Baldwin's probably a number 2 or 3, and the rest of their guys are number 3s or 4s. But the way he can place those balls and let his receivers, because Curse and Lockett, those guys are 6'3", 6'4", let him go up there and win it. In those jump ball situations, it's going to be scary if Haha doesn't tackle well.
I mean, you mentioned. I mean, I love Russell Wilson. I don't think I've had some issues with him this season. I think his accuracy at times has disappeared. I mean, you can look at last week. He made a big throw to Jermaine Kearse. So, I mean, no disrespect to the announcers, but they were raving. But if Wilson hits that on the money, his wide receiver doesn't have to leap for the ball and make a diving catch or make a leaping catch. His wide receiver catches it and goes for the touchdown. Instead, his wide leaps and comes down with it, but there's no additional gain of yardage.
Right.
I mean, he is a very good quarterback. I mean, I think he went 8 of 8 on third down last week, and it's 70% completion for the season, which is just phenomenal.
QB wins.
QB wins.
But for Seattle, I think the most important player on the field, particularly, I mean, on defense, it's obviously going to be, I think it's going to be whoever's the corner, if it's Maxwell starting across from Sherman, because, I mean, I hope Green Bay challenges Sherman a little bit even, but if they're going to run a similar game plan to what they did in week 1 and just avoid Sherman altogether, if Maxwell can hold his own on that side of the field, the Packers have no chance. And, I mean, he's not going to be alone on that side of the field, even like you alluded to earlier, like, he's going to have the best free safety in the NFL, holding that down that side of the field with him. And if they can even roll over coverages a little bit and get that extra player or two in coverage on that side of the field to help him slow either, whoever it is on that side of the field, whether it's Devontae Adams, who had a big game last week, or Jordan Nelson, Randall Cobb, any of those guys, if they can get an extra guy or two in coverage to help him out, I mean, it's going to be impossible for the Packers to move the ball through the air.
Yeah, my X factor is really on defense for Green Bay. I'm going a little bit different. I'm going with LaTroy Guillaume. I'm not a Guillaume Guyon.
Yeah.
I mean, just you look at how he was bad against Seattle. I mean, he's had some good games this season. He needs to have one of his best this week. If he can just eat up a little bit of the blocks in the middle, I think that'll make the job easier for Sam Barrington, the linebacker.
Yeah, and I mean, going back to week 1 even, Guyon hadn't been with the Packers very long. He was hurt during camp and everything like that. But now, I think he was even like a Vikings reject at one point.
He was.
Now, at this point, he's playing pretty well. And if he can really, even eat up an extra blocker or two when he's, playing in the middle, that really is going to make the job a lot easier for guys like A.J. Hawk or Sam Barrington. I mean, even going back to week 1, Brad Jones was the starting middle linebacker for the Packers.
Oh, God.
Yeah. So, I mean, that in itself is going to help the Packers alleviate concerns in the run game.
Yeah. I mean, it'll help the Packers alleviate concerns everywhere. I mean, look, Brad Jones had, I mean, the past few weeks he's had penalties that have ruined third down stops. He had one in week 1. He dropped an interception in week 1. He's just, I mean, I respect that he plays the game. I respect, but he shouldn't be on the Packers roster.
No, he shouldn't. And I mean, I'm a little nervous that the Packers might use him more this week because he's a freak athlete. He really is. But and Sam Barrington, I mean, he's a decent athlete, but he's a better football player, obviously. And I'm nervous that they're going to use Jones to maybe spy Wilson a little bit, and that scares the crap out of me. The one last thing that we haven't even touched on yet is Seattle's home field advantage.
Yes.
It's the best in the league. I mean, probably them and Kansas City, but Chiefs Twitter would be all over me because they have that record now. But like, in a sense, like it's the best in the league. It's incredibly loud. I mean, their stadium design allows for that, but it's certainly, especially with God, I can't think of his name, center Lindsley. If I think he's going to be an X factor on offense for the Packers, because even if he has a bad snap or a false start, especially across that offensive line, if that's going to put the Packers behind the sticks again, that's going to take Lacy out of the equation and make the Packers throw the ball.
I mean, you mentioned the sound at Seattle, which is crazy. I mean, I'll just say that Seattle has the best fans in football, I believe. And a big thing that Rodgers does, which is he's so great at, is getting the defense to jump off sides. And in Seattle, that's going to be a lot difficult. And if they don't do that, that's going to take away some of the free plays he loves to have. That's going to take away free yardage and free first downs.
Yeah, and I mean, the way he's so great at that. But I think at the same time, that could work against Packers because, he's going to try and draw them off sides. And it's probably inevitable that one of those, once or twice, that's going to cause one of the linemen to false start even.
Yeah. And on the offensive line, one of my X factors is Brian Bulaga. I mean, it will be big that he's back for Green Bay at right tackle, but also you look at not last year but the year before, he was obliterated I mean, he had a Derek Sherrod game, and I think he is better this year, but he cannot have that again. He needs to solidify that side. Whoever Seattle throws at him, he needs to provide protection.
Yeah, I mean, it's their offensive line might be the ultimate key in the entire game. If they can protect Rodgers and keep him clean in the pocket, the calf becomes less of an issue. And another thing that's going to help them is, last week, it was, 20 degrees or so at Lambeau. And this week was it CenturyLink Field, I think, is that what it's called? It's going to be in the mid to upper 40s. So that's going to keep his calf a little bit more loose. I mean, the cold weather really hurts him in that sense. But I even think it's supposed to rain. So I'm really interested to see how the weather and, helps or hurts the Packers. Also, Lacy was taken out for a decent portion of last week. I never really found out why.
He had an asthma attack.
Asthma, yeah, and the cold weather kind of hurts them with that. So I almost think as much as the home field advantage is is really gonna help Seattle, especially when they're on defense, that the warm weather is gonna help the Packers a little bit.
Yeah, and I'm checking the Seattle weather right now because we're an advanced video thing. We check the weather. And one thing we also want to talk about is we saw going back to week 1, which we always refer to. We mentioned Green Bay didn't attack Sherman at all. He wasn't targeted. So do you think Mike McCarthy, and I say this because back in week 1, Aaron Rodgers, there was a lot of criticism of him, mostly on him for not attacking Richard Sherman. But I put a lot of it for the game plan of Mike McCarthy. Do you think we see that change in the NFC Championship?
God, I hope so. Like I've said before, if we're really just going to go with the same game plan as week 1, I'll just hand Seattle the win right now. It's just, and it makes me nervous because Mike McCarthy is one of the most stubborn coaches in the league. he likes his game plan. He likes the way he's going to do it, and it just makes me so uncomfortable that he's just giving away a third to half of the field against and leaving Earl Thomas to cover that other half. Even just hanging over, Byron Maxwell or whatever. That just makes me incredibly nervous. I really hope they don't stick with that. I mean, I'm not saying go out there and just attack Richard Sherman like he's a terrible corner or something, like he's a Matt Carroll or whatnot. But like, I don't want to be afraid of him. That doesn't make any sense. I mean, even you go, Aaron Rodgers is the best quarterback in the league. I'm not going to listen to anyone argue otherwise. Jordy Nelson's a top 10 receiver. But I think if you get a guy like Randall Cobb who is so good in, short areas, small spaces, he's quick, I think he's one of those guys who could really give Richard Sherman even the slightest bit of trouble. And it's going to be interesting to see whether or not Mike McCarthy actually goes that route.
Yeah, I mean, and this isn't asking for Randall Cobb to match up on Sherman the entire game. It's not asking him to have a huge game. But if he can have just a few receptions, just attack Sherman 3 or 4 times, that at least shows Seattle you're willing to attack Sherman, and it adds another area that they have to stop.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, it shows that you're willing to go over there, and they can't use. I mean, even at that point, they can't just send Earl Thomas over to the complete other side of the field and let Chancellor play the middle. Like, if you're going to give up that third of the field, there's no reason for any of those safeties to play over there.
And one other thing I want to talk about is obviously Seahawks have been dominating over the past about really second half of the season. But one thing that's not being talked about a whole lot is if you're looking at their wins, I mean, they're not really playing that impressive of quarterbacks. I mean, Ryan Lindley, Mark Sanchez, Sean Hill was the Rams quarterback. So, I don't know. I mean, how will they fare against – I mean, they've had success against Rodgers, but past few months, Seattle has not been playing incredible teams.
Yeah, I mean, it was funny going back to – I think they were 3-3 to start the year, and people were talking about them not making the playoffs and kind of laughed at that. But, I mean, beyond that, they went 9-1 to end the year. I don't really care who they're playing. To win 9 out of 10 is still very good, especially in this league. But, I mean, and this is like a different story if Aaron Rodgers is completely healthy, I think. But even if Aaron Rodgers is 80% of who he was at his peak, I'm not sure he's a very good quarterback still, but it's not like he's Aaron Rodgers, potentially the greatest of all time quarterback. That's something that's really going to help Seattle and makes me a little bit concerned as a Packers fan because I mean, he's without Aaron Rodgers playing at his best, or even if let's say he gets hurt even more in the game and he even has to come out, the game's over.
Yeah.
He is with the Packers on offense, and the offense revolves around him.
So we do want to talk about our predictions. You mentioned that a lot of Green Bay fans are going to be very, very disappointed in you and your predictions. So what is it?
And this would all be complete, like I've said before. This would all be completely different if Aaron Rodgers was healthy. But I've got Seattle 24-21. I just think that there's just too many question marks revolving around Aaron Rodgers, the game plan the Packers are going to use, how well the Packers tackle. Do they is their game plan? What's their game plan to stop Russell Wilson? Is he going to have a Colin Kaepernick type playoff game against the Packers? Home field advantage. I sat here all last night or all this morning trying to figure out a way I can pick the Packers, but I can't do it. I'll take Seattle 24-21 in a really close and fun game.
Yeah, I mean, I have it close as well. I mean, I'll admit I'm a Green Bay fan. I don't have my Green Bay hoodie on right now. That's in another room.
Yes,
but
that's a huge mistake on your end.
It was a mistake. I'm just I'm gonna take Green Bay in this game. Obviously, people can say I'm biased. I'm cool with that. You know what? I do think it's gonna be a close game. I have Green Bay 27-24. Just I think if and this is all about Mike McCarthy committing to run the football, sticking with it the entire game. You should get I mean, just get those chunks of yards, 4 yards, 5 yards, 3 yards. Maybe bust off one or two big runs. Make things easier for Aaron Rodgers. Go after Richard Sherman. Use all sides of the field. And if they can do that, and the defense steps up a little bit and is able to contain Marshawn Lynch to maybe, I don't know, if you're able to contain him to 100 yards, and I think that's reasonable in this game. I think you can win it if you can limit the turnovers. I just 27-24 Green Bay. I think one thing we can both agree on is we've heard some people talk about, oh, this is going to be a blowout game. Seattle's just going to beat them by double. I don't see that at all.
Not at all. It's going to be a close game. I don't think it's going to be one of those, it's tied and going into the final drive type games, but I think it's going to be, it won't be more than a touchdown to 10-point game the whole time. More importantly, for degenerates like me, I think the Packers cover the spread. But there's just so many question marks. I don't, as much as I love Mike McCarthy, I don't trust him necessarily to do what he really needs to do to get a win, or at least in my estimation. And it's one of those things. If Aaron Rodgers is healthy, I don't think this would be all that difficult for me to pick the Packers. And as a homer, I hope you're right. And anyone can attack me all they want if the Packers do win, saying I'm a bad fan. But if I'm doing a preview as an analyst or whatever you want to call me, I can't pick the Packers to win. And it makes me hurt.
Yeah, I mean, it's one ridiculous thing is about if you don't pick that team, you're a bad fan. But really, I mean, being realistic, I can easily see Green Bay losing this game. I mean, there's a lot of things in Seattle's favor. If it were at Green Bay, if Rodgers was healthy, I mean, obviously I'm picking Green Bay, but that I do believe that they can win the game, even if I am a fan. But really, it has nothing. I mean, if you pick against Green Bay, it's not being a bad fan.
Right. And it's just at this point, go Packers. But I don't want to sit here and tell people, oh yeah, Packers are going to win 31-21, and it's just going to be one of those things. I'm not going to get my hopes up in the sense that, I'm an overly emotional fan that the Packers are going to kill them. The Packers lose, and I have to drink my problems away for a week. But
yeah.
But yeah.
So we can't end this show because it's been a discussion all week. We must bring this up. Did Des Bryant make that catch?
No, he did not. It's the worst rule in sports. I've talked to people about this all week. It's honestly the worst rule in sports. But according to the rule itself, he did not catch the football. He stumbled and he fell. He didn't take running steps. He didn't make a football move. He stumbled and fell. He didn't hold on to the ball. I'm not going to listen. If you want to argue otherwise, go argue with the wall. I'm not really willing to listen to this. He didn't catch the football. Get over it. I'm not going to sit there and listen to someone say that, okay, you want to argue and say it should have been a catch? I'll listen to that because it should be, but that's the rule. But and again, I'm not going to listen to someone argue saying that affected completely the outcome of the game. They had their opportunity to score at other points, and let's say they do give them the catch and they score a touchdown. You're honestly going to tell me the way Rodgers was playing in the second half with 4.5 minutes or something like that he wasn't going to lead them down the field and at least kick a field goal for the win? Yeah, I don't believe that.
You nailed the two big points for me. I mean, by the rule, because we're going to go by the rule book, you can't get mad at refs. They went by the rule book. They made the right call. It is a stupid rule, one of many stupid rules the NFL has that needs to be changed, but it was by the rule book, so therefore it was not a catch. And then there's two things that have been ignored in all this. You mentioned one of them. There was 4 minutes left, and Dallas showed no signs of being able to stop Rodgers. They were not blitzing him at all, which people seem to ignore. That Rod Marinelli, I mean, he was highly sought after this offseason, but he remained with Dallas. He didn't blitz Rodgers. He let Rodgers sit back there, have time, wave to his friends, and just then find the open man.
Yeah, I mean, even going back to that, like, he, it just didn't make any sense. It's like you're trusting. I mean, Tyrone Crawford's a good player. DeMarcus Lawrence is going to be a very good player in the league, but you're trusting these guys who haven't really gotten a ton of pressure all year to. You're going to rely on them and play in these prevent defenses and let the best player in the league pick you apart. That's just silly.
So I do want to say, Nick, thank you so much for coming on. Really enjoyed talking Packers Seahawks game with you. I hope we can do this next week and preview the Packers Super Bowl game. That would be amazing. Where can people follow you at on Twitter?
After that, but
yeah,
we could preview the Pro Bowl if you want.
Yes, Pro Bowl preview. We take it seriously.
All right. I mean, it was fun, man. Let's go Packers.
Where can people follow you on Twitter?
They can follow me at Looking for Strange. I write for RSC Network, In-Depth Scouting, and I just joined Titletown Sound Off to write about Packers offseason.
Well, congrats on the new gig, my friend, and thank you so much for coming on.
All right.